What is up? My name is Garrett at Yogurt on Twitter, YOOGRRTT. Thank you so much for tuning into the Now Station YouTube channel. Welcome back to another album review. Thank you for all the support on the past few. The Young Lean one has been getting a lot of love. I do appreciate that. I also have a Wi-Fi's Funeral album review up as well. But today we are talking about an interesting one, I would say, as far as importance to just me. And yeah, this is the LiL PEEP Come Over When You're Sober Part 2 album review. This is the follow-up to last year's August release, which was Come Over When You're Sober Part 1. And tragically, in November after that, we lost Mr. PEEP himself. And ever since then, his music's been kind of in a limbo, it felt like, for a little bit. It was kind of sold off to Columbia Records, and they're handling distribution. And then we got word that Smoke a Sack was kind of going back through and working on the album still and kind of remastering some of the stuff. And that's kind of what we've been waiting for. And with this release on November 9th of 2018, we finally got the follow-up to last year's short album with Part 1. There's no review of that album on this channel, but when I do think about why there isn't one, it's because I think that album is the one that actually made me really kind of turn this channel into an album review channel, where that's most of the content that I enjoy making on this channel, is just reviewing albums for you guys. And that was the first one where I saw that a lot of the voices on the publications and Anthony Fantano himself and various other people were just not appreciating the work that was in Part 1. That I think I can still to this day kind of agree with a lot of the overproduced criticisms, and I get where they're coming from, but I feel like that album still stands up very well and is a great 7-track project that just flows and has a lot of heart and pain across the board in there. But it is kind of funny to look back and think about, like, wow, like, my favorite album of last year wasn't necessarily Part 1, but it probably would have been in a conversation, definitely would have been in the conversation. And yeah, when I finally did the math and, like, kind of tracked back the months, the week that I totaled my car in 2017 last year was the same week that album leaked online. And I remember listening to the leaks, and that helped a lot, getting through just that fucked up time of just that was a rough patch. And I think that's why I'll always have such an affinity for that. But then seeing everybody else kind of be on the other side, which you're supposed to be, because it's music, it's art, it's always up for interpretation, kind of just inspired me to kind of get my voice out there and at least put my 2 cents into the jar that is the internet, and that is the reviews. And without further ado, though, I do want to get into the track listing real quick before we get into the long conversation I feel like this is about to be. Track number 1 is Broken Smile, parenthesis, My All. Track number 2 is Runaway. Track number 3 is Sex With My Ex. Track number 4 is Cry Alone. Track number 5 is Lean In. Track number 6 is 16 Lines. Track number 7 is Life Is Beautiful. Track number 8 is Hate Me. Track number 9 is I Don't Give a Fuck, IDGAF. Track number 10 is White Girl. Track number 11 is Fingers. Track number 12 as bonus tracks is Falling Down with XXXTentacion. And 13 is the original version of that song with I Love McConan instead of X. And yeah, that is the total package of Part 2, but mixed with the 7 tracks in Part 1. You're looking at between Part 1 and Part 2, you're looking at a full 18 tracks, which is very cool. So in the course of when this album was getting released, there was a lot of leaks. There was a lot of versions of these songs already pre-existing. Right around the time that he actually passed, that 16 Lines video came out. It was a whole music video to the original version. And what that has kind of done is kind of giving people the opportunity for attachment to these original versions of the songs. And with part two's released, it became pretty clear that pretty quickly with the opening, with just how grand and kind of like poppy it was, in a sense. Like you pretty much should have known that this was about to be a redoing with a lot of extra additions, for better or for worse. There was definitely going to be changes made to these songs. It was already warned to us by the producers and the people working on it. There's a reason why it took this long for it to come out. There was obviously work being done. But now with like the internet and how people are reacting to this album, it's kind of gross, in my opinion, because in what world is, I feel like when you have these songs already pre-existing, you have two options. You either try to improve them, or you just release the same ones. And I feel like releasing the same ones, if you're looking at it from Columbia's perspective, and even Smoke a Sack's perspective, just as someone who's contributing to the work, and this is all also impartial and should be noted, that Smoke already said on Twitter that people wanted him to go and add stuff, and that the recordings that he was making were not going to be the final release versions. So whether or not it was to this extent or whatever, who are we to talk about what? That's out of the picture. That's not the conversation here. The conversation here is just the fact that you have these versions that have existed. They've been out. A lot of his music kind of just got released into the public after his passing, as you would do, just to share the memories and share the vibes, share the message, share everything you would want to. I would want to. I think that's beautiful. But when you have two options of either messing with it or keeping it the same, I feel like from the audience's perspective, when we already have these versions in our iPods, or in our iPods, who the fuck has an iPod, but in our fucking iPhones and in our libraries and in our rotations, and when you already have these songs, why do they need to package it the exact same version to you? Like, I can't picture a world where they would have been like, yeah, let's just release that a year later. Like, if that was the plan, I think it would have came a lot quicker. I think if they didn't see the potential of making this the album that it is now, if they didn't see this product being at least a potential end game, then and believing in this product, I don't think they would have done it. And I think whatever your opinion of like the new version of Leaning or the new version of 16 Lines is, I don't think it should ever ruin the fact that you still have the old versions. And like, I don't know. I get that they're not on streaming, but like, how are you listening to them before for you to get so attached? And I think it does just come from attachment of just getting used to this version. And there's also there's a good argument to be made that the like roughness and gritty sound of Peep's music, just in the SoundCloud era and etc. Like, when you have those early days of his music and you're listening to it, you can definitely see like there's like a sound to it that just sounds like it's being made in a bedroom, and it complements his voice and what he's talking about and the aesthetic of everything very well, and it really just made his music that much more powerful. But when you're setting alarms in the middle of your review, you're really just ruining it. No, but there is something to be said about the fact that the grand sound was never something that he necessarily needed to begin with. But I don't think that if you're going to be making your music for more and more people, that you're not going to be able to up the sound and make it more polished and make it more of a mainstream appeal. And I think that's what this is. And I think that exact concept, that exact thing happening would have came regardless of the passing. And it's just, maybe it wouldn't have sounded exactly like this, but I do think that this is where we would end up going eventually. I don't think there's any world where the sound wouldn't have evolved into a lot more polished and just atmospheric, and again, a little bit poppy sound. I think that just complements his voice very well. And yeah, and that's just my 2 cents on the whole changes being made. I feel like you have both. And yeah, it does kind of suck that as someone who, I didn't personally listen to the leaks that much. I was a big fan of the old version of 16 Lines. I like Sex with My Ex's original version. Cry Alone was fine. Life is Beautiful is a song from his old mixtape. So I kind of heard that already, or at least knew the lyrics. So I mean, there is parts of me that did feel the same way, but I don't think these changes were bad, and I think they actually improve the message of like what he's trying to say. I think the beats are very well done, even if it is a little overproduced at times. I don't think that ever masks the message or deteriorates from what is actually trying to be put across. And I think as far as making it as good sounding as possible, as far as putting it out for the billboards and putting it out for the people, radio and everything, this was the right move. And I think the product still stands as a Lil Peep album. My favorite songs so far are Broken Smile, Sex with My Ex, Leanin'. I don't know, man. Life is Beautiful, but this album just means a lot to me. So it's really hard for me to like pick my favorites because I think they're all brilliant. And I know that's such a cliche, but I think they all come across with just the most face-punching, face-melting Lil Peep that we've heard in a minute. And I think it's hard to sit here and judge that, like, when we are honestly being gifted just like a gift of God, it feels like, for me, like as like just someone who really just loved what Lil Peep stood for and loved his discography. And yeah, I think that there's a lot on here that allows him to be looked over as someone who made great music. And I know that sounds like such a weird sentence, but I just feel like we've lost, in the past year, we've lost Peep and we've lost X and Mac Miller. Rest in peace to everybody. But when X passed, it was like people can go and look at his discography and be like, oh yeah, that's his sound. It really encompasses like what he was doing. And I didn't ever feel like, as far as on the streaming platforms and what was available to most people who aren't downloading SoundCloud and going to look for these things, as far as the iTunes goes, or if my mom was going to go look it up, like, I didn't feel like the music was, the projects available to them were actually like, that's the Lil Peep album, like that's the best one. And I don't think since, like, you know, Crybaby, I think that's the one for me that I think I identify as the most Lil Peep album. But again, that's not really available to everybody if you're not looking for it. So it was weird, like, looking forward into this thing, and I'm like, well, all I want for this man is just one album that can sit there and put a great bookend on just this man's music and get the message across, so that they do get inspired to go find Crybaby and go find Hellboy and all these other great projects that he has released in the short time that he was making music. So it was always such a weird thing for me, where it was like, is this going to come across as that? And am I hyping myself up? Am I going to be let down if those expectations do not be hit? And I honestly can't answer that question at the moment. I think this is a beautiful project. I think it honestly stands on its feet really well. And as far as this being the project that comes out after his passing, I think this is all I can ask for, and this is all I could really want. Just again, as somebody who just has such an affinity for his music. And I think when you listen to the End of Fingers and you listen to him call out, is anybody out there, on 16 Lines, and you listen to I Don't Give a Fuck, and that guitar hit is hidden, like, I don't know, man. There's a lot on here that makes you just fucking feel, or just the way the album introduces itself with this like slow roasting, like orchestra building up, like, and then the beat drops and you're just like, fuck, man, like, he was so goddamn talented, just so goddamn talented. And man, I hope we get more. I know there's that McConan album is apparently coming out. Goth Angel Sinner has apparently been scrapped. That was the Fishnarg album. And we're supposed to be getting like a compilation album where they're going to take like songs like Star Shopping, I assume, and probably some from Goth Angel Center, and they're gonna kind of just compile as many songs as they can for us to get on streaming. And I'm sure they're gonna be redoing some of them to make them sound as good as possible. And I think that's just the nature of what it's gonna exist as. And I think that's exciting though, because even though it's cool to just have Star Shopping appear on Apple Music tomorrow, I think that there is something. I actually don't fucking touch Star Shopping, but I'm just saying that there is something interesting that they could improve upon these already beautiful songs. And, you know, I don't know if they necessarily need to try on all of them. Like I said, Star Shopping is flawless in my opinion. And if you haven't heard that, then go listen to that. If this is your first Lil Peep album, I am interested to know in the comments of like what you thought. How did it come across? Yeah, that's just such an interesting perspective that if you're just now finding his music now, and welcome, you're about to have a good time going through his catalog if you do. But yeah, I think that this is just, I don't know, very melancholy for me. It just it's a lot, but I think that there's so much good stuff in here, and I can't help but just recommend this album. And I think it's an important piece of music, and I think that I'm gonna be looking back on this. Particularly because I do own the vinyl at the moment. I got the vinyl in the mail, and that's like my favorite vinyl I've ever had. Like the artwork that came with it and the letter from his mom, and just a lot that rides with this album, just like emotionally, metaphorically. Just for me, what it means to me is like always gonna kind of put it on this pedestal. But as someone who maybe doesn't listen to his music and doesn't have that same love and same affection, then I just want to say, like, this album is more than worth your time. And if you're just a fan of early 2000 punk music, like Blink-182, Sum 41, but also have a love for trap music with, like, the 808s and those beats, those Atlanta drums, then, yeah, this is the man for you. And I don't think there's anyone on the market right now doing it better. And I think that there's going to be a lot of people trying to replicate that. And I don't think you can, because it was so raw and so emotional and so real and just authentically Lil Peep. So, yeah, let me know in the comment section below. What is your favorite track? What stood out to you? Did you enjoy this album? What is the thing that hit you most about this album? If you do have the same affinity towards just his passing and etc., just that this is it. This is the end of Come Over When You're Sober, and let's see what else comes out after this. But it's kind of in Columbia Records' hands, and for better or for worse, we'll see what that is. Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much. Follow me on Twitter at YoGurt. Thank you just again, and I love you guys. Take care.